You're listening to Making Money Online with Lisa Johnson, the podcast that tells you what it really takes to build a business and the simple steps to get you there. I'm determined to share with you the reality of easy, simple business marketing tips to make passive income so that you can start making money online. Making Money Online is sponsored by Nicola J. Rowley PR, helping entrepreneurs and brands get visible through strategic storytelling. If you're serious about being seen and impacting the lives of others, harnessing the power of PR is the best way to grow and scale your business. Visit njrpr.com for more details and read Nicola's best-selling book, The Power of PR. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. Today's is a really good episode for those of you that are looking, especially women. I don't do many episodes that are mainly for women, but this one really is about helping women to be more financially independent so that they can have the life that they actually want to have and make the choices in their life that maybe right now they can't make because they're trapped in some way financially. So I have a guest today. So I have with me Emma Morby. Emma helps women enter the property investment market and has done that herself and now teaches others to. So welcome to the podcast, Emma.
Hi, thank you.
The first thing I want to talk about with you is you haven't always been financially independent, have you? Like that you were in a relationship that you needed to get out of. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, so just over 3.5 years ago, I left my ex-husband with 4 bags of clothes and 3 children, literally walked out of the family home and had to restart again. So everything I built up from a financial standpoint, I had to give up and walk away. Prior to that, I'd burnt myself into the ground, trying to be a mum, trying to earn £100,000 a year in a job that demanded a huge amount of expectation, trying to deal with all of the home, running it, being a good wife, all of those usual things. And I burnt myself into the ground and I became really unwell with it. And there was no real light for me at the end of the tunnel unless I left my husband. And I kind of thought, well, at the time I had a £22,000 childcare bill.
Wow.
And that was them in nursery. So for me, it was a case of, well, how am I going to move out and be able to afford everything? Yeah. How am I going to be able to leave him and afford everything? And the only real way I could do that was in property. Now, I'd already been in property, starting to have the wheels turn. I've been studying and learning. And I'd brought a property without him knowing at the time to try and get an income. But unfortunately, my hand was forced, so I had to leave. It was either that or I would die, and that sounds very extreme, but unfortunately, that's how far he pushed me to being very unwell. And I don't really want other women to be in that position. I find, especially women with children, are trapped in the never-ending cycle of work, home, marriage, children, and they don't see a light. So
no, and I think people are scared to leave. Like, I speak to quite a lot of women that are scared to leave their partners, even when it's abusive. Like, they're scared to leave, and the biggest reason that they're scared to leave is financially. How will they survive? And it's such a shame, because some of these women are really smart, really, really intelligent. Like, they had in their 20s really good career prospects, and then they ended up not being able to actually do very much because of the traditional home situation. And then when they're like 40s, 50s, and they want to leave, they want to go and do their own thing, they don't dare, because the fear of, well, how will I even, provide for my kids is always there. And I think this is more prevalent than we think. There's a lot of this out there. Were you scared to leave?
I wasn't scared to leave. I knew the decision was right.
Yeah.
It was more a case of how I've always been supportive of myself financially since I was about 16 when I went out to work. So it was more a case of, how am I going to make ends meet? I live in Buckinghamshire, and rents up here just for your bog standard 3-bedroom house was £1,300. And I thought, well, I can't work full time anymore because I can't afford the £22,000 childcare bill, along with the rent on top of that, along with that. When you're only bringing in a certain amount of money, it just doesn't add up. And when you earn a certain amount of money, so over, I think it's 30 odd thousand, you can't even get government support. So you're in that position where you're like, I can't afford to live, but then I can't also go and get government support to help me live.
You're just stuck, aren't you? So
Yeah.
you already knew a little bit about property. You'd been like dabbling a little bit in learning about it. And then there's lots of people that want to understand property. And to lots of us, me included, it seems a bit scary. Like, it feels like a massive thing. Like, you can't just go out there and like make money from property. But you have done exactly that and been hugely successful with it. Why did you start?
I've always had an interest in property. So I had an inventory company where I checked tenants in and out of rental properties. And that was where I fell in love with property. And I like transformational work. So for me, it was seeing something, a bit run down and turning it into something beautiful. And my mum had dabbled in it and built up the ranks a little bit. And I thought, well, I'd like to, but I'm one of these people that I need to understand it properly, because if I'm going to bet my money or even someone else's money, from an ethical standpoint, you have to understand it. You can't just, you can't be a mechanic, open a bonnet and then go, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, it wouldn't be very ethical.
No. So I studied. I spent a good year or so learning planning. I went on various courses, which unfortunately in the industry, you can pay a lot of money on courses and they don't actually give you what you need. They always leave a big burning question, and then you've got to pay more money to get that question answered, or you've got to join a mastermind, or there's always something. Yeah. And at the time, I just didn't have that money to spend and burn. And so it was credit cards and stuff like that, until I realized that I needed to stop spending and start getting out there.
Start doing it, because you learn a lot doing, and it is risky, but you do learn a lot doing. So was your first property, how did you buy your first property? Like, with what money? And do you always need to have a lot of money to start in the property business?
No. So a lot of people will believe that you have to have hundreds of thousands of pounds behind you. The simple fact is you can buy a rental property, and as long as you have probably about 20,000, roughly 15, 20,000 behind you, you can buy a rental property, normally up north, because they're cheaper up north. And there's a process where you can rent that property and get between £400 and £600 income every month without fail.
True passive income.
Yeah. And so a lot of women who maybe want to leave their husband, and they might have, £100,000 sat in the house that they want to leave, they sell and they think, well, that's not enough money to buy. I don't want to waste it by spending it on rent. What am I going to do with it? Well, if you bought 4 or 5 of those houses, all of a sudden it's generating you an income of £2,500, actually physically coming in. So, from my standpoint, you don't need a fortune to make your life easier. I started off with the odd buy-to-let here and there, and then I moved into. I actually then decided, basically, I wanted to rebuild my life in 5 years. So I wanted to come out with nothing, and then I wanted to buy a small holding for me and the children down in Devon. A dream of mine. The schools are better. It's a better way of life. It's slightly slower than the London way of life.
Yeah.
And to do that, I needed to have a pretty vast sum, hundreds of thousands behind me. So I opted to step straight into property development and build or convert. And our last project was a multi-million-pound project, converting a care home into 14 apartments. And that was the one that gave me a huge amount of money to be able to go and buy what I wanted to buy. I'm in the processes, hopefully, of doing that. And fingers crossed, the back end of this year, you'll maybe on my social media feed, you'll start to see me living the good life, as they call it.
I like that. So when you do a project that big, that is like millions of pounds, do you borrow the money from other people to buy the place, to turn it into apartments?
Yeah, so we had an investor. So I work with a handful of investors, and I've done that by building a track record with them. We had an investor who invested a small amount of money. I had built up a small amount of money from a previous project, so I put some money into it as well. And then the rest was funded by banks, not like your Barclays or anything like that, traditional development finance banks. and they funded pretty much 87% of it, which during COVID was high. You'd on average get about 75% on funding normally.
Okay. And then you obviously can make a lot more money than you're putting in, so you can pay all of those people back plus some, and you have a bit on top them for yourself.
Yeah, they take everyone takes an interest out of it, and then we're left with the profit at the end, and that profit is then distributed.
And so the bigger the project, I presume, the bigger the profit that you have at the end. And so when people start small in property, it's to make a tiny bit of profit so that they can put it into the next project, and it keeps growing. So it's like compounding that money, making the money work for you over and over again. I like that.
Yes. So we often say to people, start off small. And that might be a buy to let, it might be a flip. It depends on what people need. So if you're looking at, becoming financially solvent within a certain period of time, probably property development is the way you're going to move forward with that, because you can get, especially in the home counties, hundreds of thousands of pounds out of a project. If you're looking just to release yourself, like your immediate worry is, I just need to have enough money to survive. I can't buy a house. I've got money from that house. What am I going to do with it? Well, then that becomes an income issue. So buy to let are your quickest form of income, and that can generate within 3 months. You can generate a decent amount of income coming through.
Yeah,
it depends on what people's needs are.
Yeah, and what do you think are the biggest reasons that people, especially women, don't start this?
I think that the majority of the trainers in the industry are male, and I think that puts people off. Women are remarkably astute at understanding how the world works, and they can see the pyramid selling and all of the things that go on. So I think a lot of them have come across that in their travels and thought, oh, do you know what? It's just not for me. I'd rather invest somewhere else. I also find that because women are so busy trying to run a home, a family, a life, that they look at it and think, well, for the spare 6 hours a month I have, I don't have time to learn this. I can't understand it. I can't study it, and I can't give it my full attention. So that also puts them off. I come across, there's a lot of women who I speak to who really, really, really want to get into it, but they want to do it properly, like I did. They want to do it properly. They want to learn. They don't want this never ending, oh, but now you've got to do this, and now you've got to pay me for this, and then pay me for that. And they just want to learn and get started. And once they get started, they know they'll be good at it. But it's just the starting part that holds them back.
I feel a bit like that, like with property. I give other people money to spend in property to make me a return, but I have an interest in it, and I've always been a bit wary of it, only because you don't know what you don't know. But I'm definitely going to start learning about it and doing it. And actually what I might do is on this podcast, I will tell you guys step by step, like how it's going, because I think that it's really important that we diversify our income streams. And I talk about that all the time. And property is a really good way to diversify whatever else you're doing. Property is always going to be a good way to diversify your income streams. It's one of those ways of making real passive income eventually. And so I've always been interested in it. And I'd love more women to get involved in it, because everybody I meet who has done really well is male, like everybody that I meet. You're like the first person that is making so much money from property and is doing it on your own as a woman. And I want more people to be able to have that. So yeah, I think it's brilliant what you're doing. How do you help people? So at the moment, if somebody was like, okay, I really want to learn how to do this, how do you help people? Do you do it in a one-to-one setting, or do you do it in courses?
It's a bit of both. So basically, when you first come in, you have to learn the basics of property, which is just a simple course. And without understanding the real basics of property, the terminology, what types of finance there are out there, that sort of thing. And then moving forwards, if somebody needs additional support, basically it's what I wish I had when I started. When I first started, I just wanted someone to hold my hand and say, when I said, what was that solicitor's question? I don't understand that. My builder's come up with this and I think it's a little bit too expensive. Could I get planning on this bit of house here? All of those little questions that I had, that I had to pay the privilege to basically people to ask these questions. I'd like to put together a small group of women traditionally, and we work on it's not a one-to-one basis, but it is a very close basis, where the aim is that we go through a process over 6 months, and at the end of it, they come out with a property. Normally, most people will do a buy-to-let. They'll come out with something at the end. I've had people who've come out and they're really gung-ho and they've got a multi-million-pound development. But they do normally have a base knowledge.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, you know, our investors work like you do. Our investors will give us money to be able to invest in projects to then give them the return. And that, again, is a very passive way of working. But then at the same time, if you have a love of property, as you build up your property portfolio, you can then claw that money and then start doing developments, or you build up a track record to show that you can convert houses, you can put kitchens, bathrooms in, you can project manage a build. And that will then give the banks more confidence when you go out looking for money, investors more confidence. When you're going to them saying, I'd like to borrow, 350,000, they're like, well, okay, but what have you done in the past? And if you say, well, nothing, that no one's going to lend you any money. So it is a process, probably over, to become completely financially free, I'd say you need a 5-year run at it.
5-year plan. That's not bad though, is it? Like, it's worth it.
It's not bad. No, it's not bad. A 5-year plan to be, what I call comfortable is not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So if somebody wants to come and learn a bit more about this and come and work with you, where is the best place for them to come?
Probably go and look onto my social media initially. I've got a couple of examples of buy-to-lets where they're real life examples where people can see what I mean by how easy it is to find a buy-to-let if you know what you're looking for, and then how to buy it. And these are, I don't know if they currently are right now, because somebody's probably gone on my social media and snapped it up, but they are examples of real properties. They can find me via my social media, by all means, if they want to get in touch. So Instagram, it's the Female Property Expert, and the same for Facebook. I'm only on Instagram and Facebook.
Perfect.
And I do LinkedIn, but I tend not to be very active on it, should I say. We also have a website. If they want to go to the website, it's www.thefemalepropertyexpert.co.uk. We only work with a small amount of women initially, because obviously I want to be able to alter their lives. But regarding the course that gives you the basic knowledge you need, anyone can go on that. That's absolutely fine.
And it sounds like that's the best thing to start with anyway.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for being here and sharing your knowledge with us. It's really, really inspirational. Thanks, guys, for tuning in as usual. And I will speak to you again next week for another episode of Making Money Online. Thank you for listening to Making Money Online with Lisa Johnson. If you'd like to get hold of my guide to launching, go to lisajohnson.com/launch and let's get you making money online.